my friends, and welcome back to Where Wendy Creates. Today we are putting the second round of the binding on this beautiful red, white, and blue patriotic quilt. So I am very excited, and we are going to use the domestic sewing machine for the second round of the binding. And we have it on the first round. We've trimmed to a fat 1/4 inch all the way around. And now we're going to be turning it around on the quilt and stitching it down, binding. And my friends, when we're doing the binding, we want to go ahead and trim the edge to about a 1/4 inch to maybe a 1/4 inch or just larger than a 1/4 inch. And we want to go ahead and trim all of the sides to where we're ready to pull the binding around and do it. So when you take your quilt after the first round, go ahead and trim the entire 4 sides so that we can begin to go ahead and sew it on. All right, and we flip the whole quilt around and we do the next side. And again, this is not an exact measurement, my friend. We just want to get real close to that fat 1/4 inch. And if you have it folded, you can just pull it towards yourself while you're cutting it. And that way it goes so much quicker and so much easier. We're going to be saving everything that I pull off. These thin batting pieces, there's a very, very good likelihood we're going to stuff some primitive hearts or pillows or creatures with it. And the brown fabric that is part of our backing, that's big enough we can do strips, definitely in our scrappy quilt, if nothing else, because it is thin. I don't think I'd get a full 2.5 inch strip out of it, but we're going to definitely be keeping that in our scrap pile. And my friends, hit that subscribe button because I am itching to do another scrappy quilt. So very, very soon we're going to be working with our scraps and making a quilt. And you know, every quilt I make, I want to have at least a twin size, if not much larger. So I am very, very excited and getting geared up to want to do another scrappy quilt. All right, so let's turn this around, move you around so you can see, and we will show you how we get started on our binding. First, I'm going to take all 4 corners and I'm just going to snip them off, make sure that I'm not getting into the stitch zone. And let's get to the sewing machine. Okay, and we're going to have red thread in the top and in the bobbin, and so it's going to match the red on our binding. I'm going to start somewhere in the center on one of the sides. Try and get the bulk of the quilt up to where you're balanced up on the table, and we're going to take the binding and we're going to fold it over, and we're going to stitch to be real close to right in the stitch on the front. So we want an even binding there as we get started. And if you have these clips, they come in very, very handy. So we're going to take our quilt binding and we're going to fold it over. And I'm going to put one clip up higher than I'm going to start stitching. And I'm going to put a couple down below so that I can easily continue without constantly having to refold the material. You can use pens, but I find using these little clips or binder clips very helpful. And if you have trimmed your fat 1/4 inch semi-accurately, it's going to be a lot easier as well. So when you fold it over, you want to try and stay level as we go through. So again, I have one clip higher and it's going to stay in there, and I'm going to have the clips down the line. And when we start stitching, I'm doing a quick back stitch, and then I'm going to be stitching as close to this edge as I can on the red stars, but as close to the edge as I can. So we've done our back stitch, and now we can begin just stitching down our binding, removing our clips as we get to them. And no, the clips are not necessary, but I think if you're not familiar or you don't do binding a lot, the clips come in very helpful, and that way it keeps you in line and making an accurate measurement. So again, my hardest thing that I do, my friends, is go slow. It is important to go slow. So if you have the turtle gear on your sewing machine, this is when you want the turtle gear. Because the slower you go, the faster you're actually going to be, because slow is accurate and accurate is fast, right? So we don't have to pull stitches, we don't have to rework anything. We're going to go real slow. And I'm going to go real slow all the way around, but I want you to see a couple of corners. So I will be showing you at least 2 corners, and that way I think the hardest part is the corner. So that way you will get a good feeling of what we're doing. And I cannot wait to show you this finished quilt with the binding on it. Absolutely gorgeous. And yes, my friends, we do have a tutorial of me making this. It's probably about 3 months ago, but I'm just finally getting around to quilting it and binding it. So you can see the entire process of me creating this quilt about probably 3 months ago. We're almost coming up to the corner, which is the important part to watch and learn. So we're going to take our scissors and we're going to trim off the point, because that's just bulk that we do not need, because we want a tight, sharp corner. And yes, I save all those scraps too. I'm crazy about scraps. If something is not a light color, you can even stuff it with tiny fabric scraps. Looks like that's over a quarter. All right, so we're going to lay it out flat. We're going to come right straight down our corner. Once we have our corner, I'm going to back stitch off, and then I'm going to roll up my corner to have the perfect point. So maybe the next one I'll hold in front of you or readjust the camera so you can see it better. But what we're looking for is a sharp point out here and a sharp point that matches right in the center. So I don't quite have that yet. And the more accurate your corners, the more beautiful your quilt. Okay, now we've got points. So now I'm going to come up on it real slow, making sure I have either a stiletto or my fingers holding it tight. All right, and I have the needle on it, and now I'm going to pick up the foot, pivot, and I'm going to go back and forwards right on that perfect pointed corner. And we're going to come out far enough that I can show you the point on the corner, because I'm pretty. I think that the corners really make the quilt binding. Now, I haven't looked at it yet either, my friends. So I'm thinking we may have to go back over it a couple of stitches. But now that I'm down far enough, let's needle down, pull it around. Look at this perfect point. We've got a point out here, and we've got it joining in the center. And look at that. My stitches, ooh, toot, 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 toot. Want to be a little more careful about the stitches. pull it over a little bit less because we want that binding the same size on both sides. So let's easily work it out a little bit. Now, remember, you have a 2.5-inch strip folded in half and then folded in half again. So you have 2.5 inches. That brings you down to 1 1/4, which brings you down to just over a half that you're working with. And which brings me up to another point, my friends. We are going over multiple layers at the same time. So you want to make sure that your stitches on the back, your tensions are set appropriately, and you're going slow enough to where you're not straining your machine as you sew. And I'm going to keep on going, and then we'll bring you back to see the next corner, shall we? But I'm simply doing about 1 inch, 2 inches, stopping, readjusting the bulk of the quilt, readjusting the size and the flatness of the fold, and coming back. And when you stop, if you're taking your hands off of everything, you want to make sure your needle down. Okay, so we're coming up on our corner again. We're going to take our scissors and we're going to make sure that we do not cut our thread, but we want to cut off that corner. And then we're going to continue to sew right up to the corner. And if you are not using pens, make sure you're using multiple fingers to hold this down. You don't want any bolts. You don't want any buckles. You don't want any surprises in your binding. So go slow, hold yourself down with multiple fingers. Use your measure if you need to make sure you have the correct span, equal distance here, equal distance here. So that is important when you're doing a binding. And the more bindings you do, obviously, the better you get. Let's see. Let's get a little closer to our edge. Okay, now we're coming down to our bottom edge. Let's see why my fingers don't want to do it correctly. Get in further, lay it over. And we are manipulating the binding. Do this as many times as necessary to get that perfect little point on the edge. And you want your seams coming together exact. Almost had it there. Big old fat fingers. Sometimes using a stiletto is going to help you as well, or even stabbing a couple of pins in, and that way you're going to get a better, sharper corner. But continuing to do things the same way, you're going to get the same results. So change it up a little bit, walk away if you need to get that perfect point. we go. We're going to flip it around and start going down the opposite side. And let me just take this out a second to make sure it's not as perfect as I had hoped. Let's see if we can just redo a little bit of that corner here. All right. Okay, and now we have 2.5 sides left. If you have the ability to have needle down, I always recommend needle down. That way, if for a second your bulk of your quilt slips or slides or doesn't behave, you're not moving your needle, you're held in place. To another corner, we are going to nip off the corner and fold us over again. point on the bottom. Not pointy enough. Ha ha ha, there we go. Okay. And my top comes to a V. Can you see that in there? It's coming right to a V right here and a point over here. Okay, let's see. Down, back. All right. And needle down, foot up, pivot, and we start going around the next side. And again, constantly readjust the bulk of your quilt to where it's not pulling or torquing as you stitch. And if for any reason you need to move your machine, needle down, needle down. So that's going to hold it in place. And needle down. And we're coming right back around to where we started right here. So our binding is laying well. And we are so almost done. See how my fist is pulling the bulk of the fabric as I go? Always have it to where it's not pulling too hard against you, against your sewing machine. Extra little nudge here. And half an inch. And we are back where we started. Do a little knot. And now we're going to trim our threads and show you what we look like. I'm so excited. Are you excited? I'm so excited. It feels great when you finish a top, but nothing beats it when you finish it ready to go to its new owner, its new bed, its new place, or to get a price tag on it or anything else. So I'm excited. Let's open it up and show you what she looks like. Now, my friends, do you remember this quilt? And our binding is on. It matches so well. And on the back, we have the brown and the binding. So I am ecstatic. Yay! Woohoo!